My name is Denise Hurst. I am on the Qsen Advisory Board and employed by the North Carolina Board of Nursing. I'm an education and practice consultant for the board. Our first speaker is Nancy Spector, Director of Regulatory Interventions with the National Council of State Boards of Nursing. She's going to talk with us about implementing a Qsen-focused transition to practice program.
Thank you. So some of you may be reading about the Introduction to Student Errors Reporting Database, and that was based on Jane Barnsteiner and Joanne Dish's work, and we have brought it into NCSBN. We have the whole database set up, ready to go. I was writing letters to deans and directors to invite programs to be a part of it. However, our lawyers got involved in this and are taking a deep look at it. So I had to change this presentation for today, and stay tuned to what will happen to that student year database. Hopefully, it will still work. So as you know, our offices are here, and you're looking out there from this hotel. Chicago is a beautiful city, and I really encourage you to experience it. The weather couldn't be more perfect. Walk down the Magnificent Mile, go to a good restaurant, even maybe go to a play. You know, you can even get Hamilton tickets and you stand out and wait in the morning. So please experience our wonderful city. That is our mission at NCSBN. Remember, the Boards of Nursing's mission is to protect the public, but our mission is to provide them with evidence and resources and programs so that they can do their job. So we studied transition to practice way back. We started this study way back in 2002. I came to NCSBN in 2002. I was a professor at Loyola before that, and jumped on my desk was, we have to study transition to practice of new nurses. And so I'm going to kind of take you through the background of this transition to practice journey we were on, and how Qsen got involved, and how you might be able to take some of these concepts and principles and build your own program. Or at the very end, I'm going to show you about the courses that we also have available. But this is not an advertisement for our courses. Anybody ought to be able to build from our transition to practice model. So back in 2001, we used to do these employer studies, and we still do them. But before 2000, you know, it came out, employers were pretty happy with the new graduates. However, in 2001, we found that the employers said that fewer than 50% of the employers reported that newly licensed nurses are safe and effective. Not, you know, ready to run and take care of 10 patients, but safe and effective. So that concerned us as regulators. So it was replicated in 2003, maybe there was something going on then. Same results. So our board of directors convened a committee that was charged to design an evidence-based model. And remember, this was back in 2008 and 2009, so some of these resources look a bit old, but you know, it was kind of what led us down this road. So many of you probably remember the Burkow study that came out of the nursing, NEC, the Nursing Executive Center or something. And that study found that employers reported that they're about 10% happy with the new nurses that were coming to them, whereas deans and directors reported 90% of the students are ready to practice. Remember that? And they came up with a lot. They came up with 32 competencies, and there were 7 competencies that really needed improvement. I know one of them was delegation, for example. Being able to follow up with patients. quality improvement. They needed this in practice, and they weren't getting it. You know, on our committee was made up of boards of nursing representatives, but also we had somebody from AONE and somebody from Canada, just to kind of get that international perspective. And I remember as we were going through the developing the model and everything, I remember quality improvement came up. And I, you know, as a past educator, said, is it really important for the nursing students that they have to learn this? And the AONE person said, absolutely. They come out and they absolutely have to have this. So that kind of came from her, and much of what was built into our model came from some of that work. And you know, I always loved Patricia Benner's work. She kind of pulled many years together in this 2004 article about looking at the Dreyfus model and what builds skills and competencies in nurses. And you know, came up with that advanced beginner and described it very well in this article. Is really that new graduate. And we looked at some of that. And then in 2010 came up with, you know, as well as the future of nursing in 2011, the need for nursing to have that year-long residency program. Then we looked at patient safety. One of my favorite studies was this Elfring study. It came out of Europe. And what they did was looked at new graduates, and they actually observed for errors. You know, there's always a problem if you have nurses' reports of errors because you don't know if they're accurate or not. You don't know what they didn't know they missed. So they found, again, work stress was linked to errors in nurses. Discipline reports. We had a wonderful study looking at all of the discipline reports out of Massachusetts, finding that the errors that came with discipline were related to lack of orientation with new nurses. I don't know how many of you are from Chicago. How many are from the Chicago area? Okay. Do you remember in 2000 the headlines of the Chicago Tribune saying nurses kill patients? Do you remember that? I was at Loyola at the time. And what they did was look at the discipline reports. Remember that, it's all open records at the Board of Nursing for 5 years, and found many of the errors that occur with nursing, and it was really very concerning. One of the implications that these reporters, it wasn't a study, it was these reporters, but they looked at every discipline that came to the Board of Nursing for 5 years. And they found, again, lack of orientation, which is really lack of transition of practice. Dr. Kalish out of Qsen found, in looking at a lot of the studies she's done on miscare, a lot of it, again, is related to lack of transition of practice. And then Dr. Ebright, out of the University of Indiana, looked at new nurses and actually did a qualitative study with them. In over the past years, with the near misses and errors that you made, you know, what is the biggest thing that came out? Once again, it was that lack of support and orientation. Del Bueno with Del Bueno had looked at scenarios with new nurses and found only about 50% of them found when there were mistakes that would be made and errors that could be made that would put the patient in jeopardy. And it's really the PPTS model, it's not the Google model, so make that correction on your PowerPoints. Jorgen Kirkvold out of Norway probably did my favorite study of all. This was done in 1999, and I keep telling doctoral students, this is a study that really should be replicated. What Jorgen Kirkvold did is over that first year of practice, that's the problem with doing it as a dissertation, you data collect for a year, so you know many students don't want to do that. But over the first year of practice, they videotaped new nurses in practice. This was done in Norway. And what they looked at was post-op patients, ambulation, dressing change. And they found that there was a lot of improvement made in that first year of practice. Now, a lot of the skills acquisition of bringing in, not having to run back and forth and getting the dressing pieces and you know, being able to plan their time, get off on time, everything was going smoother for them. But there was one problem. When they were making mistakes at the beginning, like putting on their gloves and contaminating, pulling out the drains and injuring tissue because the negative pressure was still on, those errors kept up over that first year in practice. That didn't improve. And the reason these authors concluded, again, this was in Norway, they had 3 weeks of orientation, and in Norway, they said, the culture is that it's, you don't go and ask for help, because that shows a weakness. You need to be knowing what you're doing if you're a new graduate. So they got no feedback, and there was no chance for reflection. And that's why you'll see in our model, feedback and reflection is built in very strongly for new nurses. Then we looked at retention. This was the data, again, back then when we were looking at it, and we were seeing quite a big turnover. It rather stopped with the economic downturn, but what we were seeing in the literature is, whereas the turnover was getting better, the new nurses still weren't satisfied and wanted to leave. It's just that they were afraid about getting a job because of the economic downturn. And then Auerbach you know, that group was looking at what's next because they really didn't know after the economic downturn. Then we looked at successful programs. The UHC, AACM residency program, we looked at that in depth, and they were on many of our collaborative calls that we had at the time. It's Vizient now. The Versant residency program, again, we looked at that in depth. Those were 2 national programs. We looked at the Wisconsin State residency program that Marilyn Bratt has been in charge of. And still there's a lot of data coming out of that program. We looked at a Mississippi program that was, it was funded by the state. It was a 6-month program, and it was a wonderful program, but I do think that isn't in operation now. I was, you know, looking back at Mississippi, many of the hospitals, however, have implemented similar residency programs. Then we went internationally, and in fact, we had a conference, and we invited our colleagues from Scotland. They have this wonderful Flying Start program, they call it, for new nurses. It's voluntary, it's an online program, and it gave us the confidence that we could build an online program and have it be successful with new nurses, because they've had a lot of success, and many of their competencies are the same as the competencies in ours. We looked at Canada's preceptorship work. They've done a lot of work in preceptors and building that relationship, which we see as the key to a good transition program. We looked at Australia. They do risk management with new nurses. They found that when they're looking at some of these safety and quality initiatives, it takes about 3 to 4 months for the new nurse to get involved in them, and even then you have to start from the very beginning. And so we built that into our model. Portugal was the only country, and at the time they were having economic problems, and I still don't know if they implemented it, but they were the only country that put it into a regulatory model. So they were going to require it, and then they had economic problems. So putting everything together, successful programs, the great literature, the evidence-based literature, this is what we came up with for the competencies of our model. And then the threads to be integrated. This definitely came from that Norway group. But if you look at this, it's not really quite Qsen, is it? So We didn't want to say, you know, we're the gurus with transition of practice. This was a nursing initiative. So we invited more than 35 stakeholders to, you know, talk about our model. You're right, I didn't have 5 minutes about that, I'm gonna talk faster. And so you can see what they were. They weren't all nursing. We had our CMS. I remember, I'll never forget that call to CMS because we wanted them to pay for our program. And so we were talking about that. How are we going to get funding? Do you think we could have some funding through CMS, like pastoral services do, like the medical residencies do? And what they said was, no comment. So, but we tried to get funding. We knew that that is a problem. And then we talked to Qsen, and especially Linda Croninwood. And some of you have been at the Dartmouth summer camp that we go to together. We were there one summer. And she said, can't we have a national model? We can't have all these different models. Can't you see if you crosswalk your competencies, if they would crosswalk into the Qsen competencies? So we did that. We looked at specialty content. It does crosswalk into patient-centered care, and that then is now in our patient-centered care course. Communication and teamwork work beautifully together. Safety, we did decide to thread it throughout our model because we're regulation. Clinical reasoning, we threaded throughout our model. Prioritizing and organizing, which came out very strong, by the way, in the literature. For that first year of practice, we put into patient-centered care. Evidence-based practice just belongs there. Role socialization of that new nurse. We really found that as being important from the literature. That's in communication and teamwork. Delegation and supervising, I cannot tell you how much in every study that we've done, as well as our POW study, that is very important, and we have built that strongly into communication and teamwork. And by the way, we are just about to start a new video on delegation. We've taken our old one down because it's kind of dated, but this is really going to be excellent because it'll incorporate our new guidelines on delegation. And then our 4 consistent threads: safety, clinical reasoning, feedback and reflection. And always remember that feedback and reflection comes from that study that was done in Norway, really, where we learned how important it was. And you've probably seen our model before, but it puts all of this together with the clinical reasoning and safety integrated throughout the modules or courses, and then feedback and reflection threaded throughout. So then we knew we had to study the model, and in fact, all of our sites and collaborators said, yes, you have to study it. So we looked at our program in terms of safety, competence, stress, satisfaction, retention, and we compared it to a control group. And we had to ask the post-hoc question, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Do transition programs make a difference? Our procedure, just very briefly, we did have state and site coordinators so that the program was implemented as designed. Online modules so that it would be implemented across all of the sites the same. All sites, and we had about 150 sites, went through their either their own IRB or Western IRB, and all preceptors were trained. Remember, a key to our model is the preceptor. Our outcome measures, we took them at baseline 6, 9, and 12 months. So this was a longitudinal study. We looked at overall competency, preceptors, and the new nurses. Specific competency, these are the Qsen competencies, preceptors and new nurses. Safety practices, with that, the new nurses reported errors, their use of positive safety practices, like who was the first one to report something was wrong, or negative safety practices, and nurses reported these. I did not use universal precautions, it was one of those. We looked at work stress and job satisfaction, the preceptor evaluation, and then the retention data came directly from the employer. So we felt that that was very reliable data, which you don't always see in the in studies. So we have this control group, they're randomly selected. If they took the TTP model, they gave up what they normally had to transition, they used our model, and they kind of lifted it in. And what did we find? We found no big differences, which we thought could possibly have happened because the control group, some of them had some beautiful handmade programs. Some of them really built in all of the evidence-based competencies into their model. Now remember, we didn't use the UHC model and we didn't use the Gerson model. So these were homegrown programs. So what we did, fortunately, we had collected data on all of the control groups' transition programs, and we looked at our components that we have in our program, and we looked to see if they had at least 6 or more of our components in their program. And if they did, we called them an established program. They had a program that was already established. And then if they didn't, if they had fewer than 6, they were a limited program. And for our program, the TTP program, we used our transition practice, and you can see they're pretty even there. Now, if you look at the results, you'll find that the established program did the best. They had the best with overall competency, the better scores with job satisfaction, decreased work stress, decreased reports of errors and safety practices. The TTP was in the middle. And the limited was on the bottom. So why do we think that happened? First of all, it's probably the biggest reason is because you need administration support. If you have your home-built program, you built it, you're supporting it. If you lift it in for a year, it doesn't have that same kind of support. And the second thing I think it could be is that specialty content. That is very important. In our patient-centered care module, we told them to use specialty content, but did they or didn't they? Whereas many of these homegrown programs do incorporate that. And you can see TTP and established have pretty good retention rates. Limited program turnover of 25%. So. All 3 groups significantly improved their Qsen competencies over the year-long period. So we know that you are doing a good job of building the Qsen competencies into your program. And so we're very happy about that. So based on our study results, our model, we do have courses that we have available. They're very reasonable. We only charge what the infrastructure is to do these online courses. You can see these are the courses available. We think some of you might be able to use 1 or 2 courses, maybe quality improvement, maybe informatics into your program, or maybe in that last semester you would want to use the whole program. And the same goes for maybe some long-term care, community hospitals would be able to use some of these courses. And so they begin with a branching scenario. They have real-world applications. There's plenty of time for the preceptor and the new nurse to connect with each other. And then there is the preceptor evaluation. You can see all of the different modalities that are used in these courses. And just a quick overview, because I know I got to stop. This is how the transition of practice across everything builds together so that we can transition that student to practice. And then as we look at the different kinds of models that we have, or courses that we have, you can see this is the communication course. And in this course, we have as the kind of the primary goal that they understand that relationship between safety and collaboration and teamwork. So there's team steps built into that one. S-bar. This is an S-bar example that the student would work through. And then on patient and family-centered care, we talk about the 8 principles of, from the Picker Institute of Patient-Centered Care. And it's important just that the new nurse learns the importance of including the family and patient as a member of the healthcare team. And they learn things in here like cultural and linguistic competencies, for example. And so then we have quality improvement, and they understand how quality improvement facilitated change in an organization, and they learn about the different ways of collecting data, the fishbone diagram, for example, the flow charts. And then informatics, and I just heard a wonderful presentation this morning about informatics. It's really information management. And they learn the importance of that and the systems that can be used. And maybe, what is the future of medical records going to be? And then, of course, evidence-based practice and how important and relevant that is to practice in giving some real-life examples of how evidence changed practice. And I love the preceptor training model. If you don't use any of them, you might want to use this one. I remember when I was teaching the preceptors, either, every student was wonderful or every student was awful. This shows the preceptor how to really evaluate the students and what kinds of things to look at and how to give positive and constructive feedback to students. So I love this quote from the Sherwood Barnes book, and it just talks about the synergy of quality and safety and leading the transition of education and practice in nursing. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I went a little over.
We have time for one question, and if there are further questions, please email Dr. Spector.
And I'll be here.
Yes, and she'll be here. You can catch her at lunch or
And
whatever.
my office is down the street, so visit me.
Don't be able to find her address in the listing of all participants. Sorry.
Any questions? Okay.
You're going to catch you at lunch. Our next presenter is Wendy Madagasky, excuse me. She's with the IHI Open School Faculty Network. She is the advisor and director of Foundations of Doctrine, Curriculum, and Interprofessional Education and Development. She's with the University of Colorado Offwich Medical Center.
Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. It's been about, I think, 2 or 3 years since I've been able to be at a Qsen conference, and it's always fun for me to see where practice is, where the organization is. I'm a family physician by training, and I spend a lot of my time working in interprofessional education, and so that's really where my heart is. Being collaborative and working in team-based care, not just in my clinical practice, but in education and in my academic institution. With the IHI Open School, I serve as the faculty network advisor. We have a very loose faculty network, but it is one that consists of many of you and many people across the globe. And so this presentation really is about what we've learned from faculty who have been integrating the IHI Open School courses into their curriculum. I wanted to just point out Gina Dietz, so she's my partner in helping to look into this a bit further and has done a lot of the lion's share of the work. And she's someone who's also centrally located at the IHI Open School and would be more than happy to help provide you with resources that the Open School has. And so she's one of our contacts for this presentation and this content as well. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just ask you quickly about who is here in terms of how you have been familiar with the Open School. So first of all, please raise your hand if this is your first time hearing about the IHI Open School. Okay, probably about a third. How about people that have been involved maybe for more than a couple of years, so they have a fair amount of experience? Okay, maybe another third. And then would it be safe to assume that the other third is just starting out or has learned a little bit and maybe figuring this out? Terrific. How about many of you serve as a chapter advisor? We have a structure as well. Anybody that's a chapter advisor? Okay. And then how many of you have actually integrated Open School content into your curriculum in some regard so far? Okay, great. Thanks. So for those of you that are new, I'm very briefly just going to describe what the Open School is about. The Open School started in 2008. Essentially, Don Berger was getting frustrated that he had tried to contact a lot of the academic institutions and saying, quality safety is important, we need to start teaching this, and there really wasn't any uptake in the licensing groups or other academic institutions. So he said, well, let's just give it to the students then. Let's put this out for free, let's create content that students can access on their own and start learning about it, and have them be the grassroots group that mobilize and really start to change the tide here. So it has a very broad mission to really advance the healthcare population worldwide, to really advance their understanding of safety and quality concepts. And the way that the Open School decided to approach this was to have 3 different domains. The first was online courses, so easy access to basic content in safety and quality and improvement. The second is community, and that is the chapter network. So all across the world, there are chapters that engage in learning about safety and quality, have activities on their institutional campuses. Sometimes they're academic institutions, sometimes mainly healthcare institutions. And so this chapter network really serves as another arm of spreading safety and quality and getting it sort of into the grassroots level of students. And then finally, the project-based learning, which is really still developing, but consists right now of quality improvement practicums as well as population health advocacy practicums. It's called ICANN. But briefly, we're going to focus more today on the curriculum, the Open School courses, so I'm going to describe this. There's over 32 different courses that were developed, and they cross these different domains. So improving capability, which is quality improvement, patient safety, person and family-centered care, always some language differences in how we frame that one, tripling for populations, and then finally leadership. So these are the basic domains that they fall into. And students can participate in the courses online. It's sort of the asynchronous experience, and you take quizzes during the series of the course, and at the end you can get a certificate of completion. We've had over 100,000 learners also complete something that's called the basic certification from the IHI Open School. And that's a series of 13 different courses that results in a different type of certification. And if any of you all heard Jerry Altmeyer earlier, she talked about how that in a CV can be very powerful. I've had nursing students come to me and say, I got this job because I had done the Open School basic certification. I can prove that I have some experience in doing that work as a part of who I am, and that's what I could bring to the institution, and the institution said, we want you. So it can very much be a positive thing for our early graduates to have this in their CV and in their experience. And then it is free to students and faculty, so you have to be cautious when you're registering. So you don't want to register yourself as a physician or as a nurse or a healthcare administrator, because then it'll push you to the side, which is for essentially the providers in practice who do get charged a small fee to participate. So as an educator, you want to make sure to register in the IHI as a faculty member, as a professor, and sort of like all linked together. And then that will get you into the free side of the course catalog. And we've had a lot of people completing the course, over 4 million course completions. And so this is our current state. Well, a comparison, when we just started in year 1, it took off pretty quickly. The students, by word of mouth, started up, but now we're way far away from that. And almost, as I said, 4 million course completions. There's 850 chapters worldwide. It's a pretty big network of faculty and of learners. So I want to share a little bit about how this impacted me. I was very excited in 2008 when I heard about the Open School beginning. I happened to go to the forum, the IHI annual forum down in Orlando, and heard about this happening and said, terrific, I want to be a part of a chapter. I don't have any students to start it, but I'm going to try to start it myself. So I headed back home to Denver and I started looking into it. And lo and behold, there actually already is a chapter. And the students that were in the downtown campus and the health administration program and the business school had already started a chapter. So I said, can I help out and be your advisor then maybe? And so we were able to start from that beginning with the students initiating it, to bring it to our health science campus, which is a different location. And we pulled in students from 7 of our different health professions programs on campus and started a chapter. The chapter itself served a really important purpose for our campus. One, it brought students and faculty together across our different programs, so across the different health professions programs, but it also brought us together across our different healthcare systems. We have Children's Hospital, VA, our Denver Health is our county hospital essentially, and then our university hospital. And none of those safety and quality people were actually talking to each other. But the open school was a safe place to bring them together and say, oh, you tell us about what you're doing and what you're doing. And then fancy that, they actually started learning from each other and talking a little bit more to each other. So the chapter was really important strategically for our campus and our community in terms of safety and quality and pushing that forward. But it also helped us in really pushing forward students that value this. So students then came to me and said, you know what, we want to start electives. We need more than just what we can do through the open school. And so we were able to start elective courses, and then the students that took the elective said, you know what, this should not just be an elective. Every one of my peers needs to be a part of this. They need to know this content for their practice. And so the students gave us the leverage to actually go ahead and make this a requirement. Through the School of Medicine, all of our students complete the basic certification before the end of their 2nd year. They're given the time to complete it. It's up to them when they want to do it. We have a couple of touch points when we make use of the content in the classroom as well. But they're given the freedom to fit it into their schedule. And now we actually require several of those same courses in our interprofessional education as well. So all the students on campus are having access to safety and quality. Nursing, I would say, by far has the most in their basic curriculum. And so we add a little bit more with our interprofessional education. But for many programs, it's really interprofessional education is the only place that they're getting this safety and quality so far. So that's my story in terms of CEU and how the open school really helped to initiate things for us in terms of pushing forward this content. Now I'm going to switch to sharing what we learned from many different institutions. So we recognize that as much as the students went out and spread this in the beginning, once this became established, the courses, faculty started to spread this as well. And so we wanted to hear more from faculty about what are you doing, how are you integrating it, and what can we do further to help you. So last fall, we circulated a survey, and we wanted to understand again the scope and spread of the open school courses, try to understand some best practices, and then also some barriers and drivers of doing this integration. And then towards the end of the fall, into the beginning of this year, we analyzed the information and then created a how-to guide to try to help share this with others. So I'm going to highlight some of the lessons learned and the results from this. So first of all, here's a summary of the survey respondents. Most of these are from the US. And as you can see down here, nursing was the largest cohort, and then medicine, and then health administration, and then a smattering of people in other programs. Integration, for the most part, was occurring in this is always a little hard across the health professions to define what's graduate and undergraduate, but we try. So what we determined is that sort of equally between undergraduate and graduate, and then some of the postgraduate, and then this other category is actually people that are assessing and involving the curriculum in multiple areas in their institutions. Okay, so this is being used pretty widely across different levels of health professions training. So we asked, why do faculty integrate the courses? And for the most part, it was to assure that learners are exposed to this content, and also establish and increase the content in their actual schools and institutions, really building up what the students are exposed to. And some of it is requirements and accreditation standards, but that's less of the reason. In terms of what types of courses are used, most of them are these introductory level courses, because that's perhaps what you can have students do online on their own, and then bring the higher level pieces into the classroom. And about 40% have integrated their basic certification, either elective or required. So there's a lot of folks that are doing this, and it seems to be pretty functional for a good cohort. So that led us to try to have a better sense of, well, how is it actually working to integrate? And so we came up with a model that we hope will be useful for you as you further your integration or begin your integration. And so this is the whole thing, and then I'll break it down. And essentially what this is trying to display is that when you're making a decision about curricular integration, or even if you're not being decisive about it and you're just trying things out, you have to decide how deep do you want to go and how broad do you want to go, okay? And so this helps to demonstrate that. So there are elements where people will choose to integrate just at the classroom level, and then more deeply and more broadly at the whole program level. Okay? So I'll break these down. So at the classroom level, what we found from the survey respondents is that most people would add content simply into a course that existed. So that's probably the most accessible way of doing this. You have a course, add a module, you take some content, use some videos, and there you're done. And then the other model that we incorporated into the classroom is to create an entirely new course that is based on the open school content and perhaps other content that's developed. So in some institutions, there wasn't a home for this. And so there was a new course that was developed, either elective or required. So this makes complete sense as you think about how can you do it. If it isn't something, you're creating something new. So it's not rocket science, but it's helpful when you're starting out to figure out, well, what's going to be best for me if you're going to focus at the classroom level. Next, moving on to the programmatic level, there are many programs that did what I described for the University of Colorado, which they assigned all the open school courses or the basic certification courses and said, you just have to get this done, get your certificate done, and that's it. So it's a sort of co-curricular requirement, maybe it's an elective, and it's something that is done sort of outside of the individual class, but part of the overall program requirements. And then finally, this is sort of the most deep and broad way of integrating, and there's two concepts in terms of curricular integration to introduce. One is horizontal integration, and the other is vertical integration. And the idea of horizontal integration is that is when you integrate sort of through a series of courses over a certain time period, say 1 year of your program, and you have safety and quality coming in at different places. And so you're coordinating it, you have a sense of over time within one section of the curriculum that you want to integrate concepts or themes. And so this was another way that some of the faculty integrated open school. Finally, the most comprehensive way is the vertical integration. And that means that it's not just in 1 year or one course over time, it's throughout the program. So you're thinking constructively about how do you want to integrate and how might you do that at the beginning level, using the Dreyfus-Benner model. How do you do it at the beginning, advanced beginner, the novice to the advanced beginner, going into competency and proficiency. And so what's right at different points in your curriculum program, and how can you actually frame that for your learners? So this is what we saw from individuals. And there's a couple of key themes that were important, including how do you actually structure the use of the course to add on activities, and it seems like most faculty that were successful in structuring this included additional activities beyond having students just take the courses on their own. And they would use a couple of examples from some schools. There's some schools in Texas where they incorporated case examples from their local environment, or also engaged students in developing projects about areas that they care about and they've seen concerning issues in the clinical setting. Securing buy-in is also important, and I talked a little bit about how CU students were important, but also program directors, course directors, curriculum directors. You need to have the framework on your side as you're integrating content in. But the student buy-in, I think, is particularly important, and if you have learners that can be reflective about the importance of this, either through the open school chapters or through interest groups, they can really be tremendous partners in pushing forward new content and evolving curricular integration. So the last piece I wanted to mention in terms of some of these tips, and we have more in the guide, is the sustaining integration. And so East Carolina University is a good example of how they said this is important, but harkening back to Jerry Altmeyer again, she talked about the lone nut and the leader, that you need followers, you need other people. And so they actually work to develop faculty and use the open school content in their faculty development to have a good cadre of faculty available to teach this and to figure out the right places to integrate it throughout the curriculum. So we asked, as part of the final part of the survey, what else do you need? You who are integrating open school, and the vast majority of folks said we want more resources for classroom use and assessment tools, as well as some things like advice on getting started and other online resources. So we have this guide, and I actually have several copies of it here if anyone wants to pick it up, but it's also available via PDF through the Open School website. And it goes over some of this content in a little bit more detail, gives more examples and suggested resources for integrating and sustaining the content. But in addition to that, we are building new resources. So this is sort of up and coming. We have lecture slides, assessment questions, other reading assignments, and group activities to try to flesh out what students can do in the classroom setting. So these are all in process right now, and we're hoping to have some of them launched pretty soon. On the Open School website, the teaching resources, tools for training students and staff, and QI is where those will be located. And we try to do a good job of linking things, so if you're teaching safety content, we can show you them as safety, other related resources. Okay, so the last thing is just to say that Open School does want to help continue to support faculty efforts here. We want to provide resources that are meaningful to you. We'd love to highlight your examples, things that have worked well for you. And so please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. The chapter network is a resource for you, but the Open School faculty network is also a resource for you. Thank you very much.
Our program has decided to have to dedicate an entire course to this content. And so I was trying to definitely, when I'm writing the syllabus right now, integrate IHA public school. I haven't done the module yet, so I'm trying to jump this summer, but I was trying to figure out, could they feasibly, in that course, do the basic certificate, or is that something that should be stretched out over semesters?
So my bias would be that the basic certification is just, it's the basic science of these content areas. So it is very accessible at that introductory level. And so it can very well be a full introduction. And that way you're going to get content across all the different domains at that introductory level. I think that would fit just fine. I also think it would be fine if, say there's a course that's focused more on quality improvement and another that might be about patient and family care, that separating it would be all right too. But it would work very well for that to be the trajectory of the course.
Is quality and safety. It's a whole course. Yeah. So it's going to be partially class. So this is the component I wanted to put online. I wanted to know if it was feasible to expect students to get that done in one semester plus two. Or if that's kind of.
So it's 13 courses, each of them are about an hour and a half. In terms of, I have to say, we have students that go through them a little bit faster sometimes because they don't go as deeply into it.
Right.
So it is possible to go faster and possible to go slower. It would probably be worth it when you're taking them yourselves to gauge what your own timing is and get a sense of where you would expect your learners to be. In our interprofessional education course, we have BSM students, MD students, pharmacy students, and everybody has a different sense of how much time they should take in terms of what credit hours we need and things like that. So sometimes we get pushback from some students saying, you know, this should only be 1 hour of out of class work, and the content is more than that. So you'll have to gauge that for your learners, I would say. But it's, I think, very powerful to have the students do it on their own and follow up in the classroom with activities that put it to work. Because you can, the new structure is nice, it's very clean, and if anyone's looked at them recently, but it is actually possible to go right to the quiz at the end now. Okay? So, just saying, it is possible to do that. So, so you want to make sure that you're following up with activities that assure that the students are actually learning the content.
Yes. Okay. Excuse me, I work at Purdue with Beth Montero, and I believe she uses the IHI. That's just a requirement in her quality and safety course. I'll be happy to share her email with you if she couldn't make it because she needs surgery. But at any rate, she loves it. And it says it's worked very well with the students.
Yeah, and just as a heads up, we did revise the courses of most of them in, I think it was last fall now. Yes. So if you haven't taken them in a while, make sure to look at them again. Most of the content is the same, but you know, if you're having exam questions or other activities, you want to make sure they still align with what your curriculum is. Any other questions?
I'm curious about the use. This is all free, the content and everything. So I'm wondering what the funding is for IHI and if it's a nonprofit. And then related to that is my question about what is going to become of. This is my first time at Qsen and IHI with the plan to eliminate the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality from the government entirely.
So I cannot answer the second question. That's above my expertise and understanding. I'm a faculty member that's affiliated with the open school and not really with all operations of the full IHI. So I wish I could shed some light on that, but I do know that the organization is committed to improvement, and it will, just as Qsen is too, and quality, safety, and education. And so I have confidence in both those organizations that they will find a way to continue their mission. And then to speak to the IHI, if anyone's gone to any one of their conferences, you will recognize that conference fees help to fund a fair amount of their organizational structure, and they get a lot of grants externally and do consulting and things like that. The open school is, I think, in a very good place in terms of there's centralized commitment to keep this available to students and to faculty. They want to do that, and that's why they started having the arm where if there are community practices, health systems that would like to educate their staff where there's no learners, that they do that for a fee, so they can use the open school modules for a fee, those that are purely in a non-educational environment. And so that small amount of money helps to, on the back end, help to continue to support open school. So it's they're committed to making it free, and they have a sustainability plan of having some of the folks that are in practice who make use of this instead of consulting with other people to bring in staff development. that this is a vehicle for a small non-funding.
Is it a nonprofit?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Patricia McGalligan, and I work for the National Patient Safety Foundation. And on May 1, we actually merged with IHI to be able to create a game-changing amount of leverage and resources to advance safety. We are both nonprofits, absolutely. And we actually have a strong history of collaboration with ARC overall. And they play a role in a lot of the convening sessions that we do. We do know that their defunding or reduced funding is certainly somewhat disappointing. But both organizations are nonprofits that have come together to create a larger nonprofit that has a much stronger safety arm on top of the improvement science and quality arm. So, if that helps in any way.
All right, and I'm happy to, Wendy Madagasky, I'm in the list of the attendees. I'm happy to take any other specific questions that you have.
Next, we have Teresa Chanel, here. And she is an associate professor at the School of Nursing for Brooks Rehabilitation College of Healthcare Sciences, Jacksonville University. She's going to talk with us about take-home implementation tools for safety evaluation.
Everybody hear me okay? Yes?
Good morning. All righty. Okay, we're coming into the home stretch for lunch. I want to make sure everybody's awake. It's great to see everybody, and I want to welcome you to this session. And I wanted to just get a read on how many folks right now might be in school themselves, thinking about going back to school, considering themselves a novice researcher, or maybe starting patient safety research. Okay, a good many. I wanted to just get a handle on where you were at with that. I was invited to address tools for safety evaluation. Not sure if you had a handle on what all that was about, but I wanted to share a little bit, since I did see many of you might be in the pursuing education, and kind of include some lessons learned on my doctoral dissertation as I went with this. I wanted to talk to you first about a tool that I developed when I was working on my doctorate. And to kind of set the stage for that, there was a perfect storm brewing about 2003, 2004, 2005 that I didn't know what was happening. My background is in women's and community health. I was working as an educator at a time at an academic medical center. In 2003, they required hospitals to have a patient safety officer set up patient safety committees and be able to address to the Joint Commission how that organization was meeting the national patient safety goals. I can remember vividly, it was the same year I had started my doctorate. Our chief nursing officer announced to the nurse leadership team, we need to have a patient safety czar. I thought patient safety, everybody should be practicing patient safety. I was appointed the first patient safety officer at that academic medical center. I can remember it was the spring of 2003. In July of that same year, they were having, it was the last year of an announced Joint Commission survey. I had never done any quality and safety. I had epidemiology background. And you would sit down for 45 minutes to the whole Joint Commission team and provide rationale how you were meeting the national patient safety goals. I can remember to this day, the weekend before, I was running around campus with a maintenance person tacking up patient safety suggestion boxes before the whole entourage came trooping in. So that was my first up close and personal experience with the Joint Commission. We had a successful evaluation. I became passionate about patient safety. It became the focus of my doctoral dissertation, and my cognate is actually in, I crafted it as in adult learning patient safety. So it was probably like a forerunner of a doctorate in patient safety. So that's how I got involved with this tool. My original thought for a dissertation was to do an intervention on healthcare leaders at my hospital, do a pre and post and see if the drill down would go on. But my team thought just one session would not really change behavior. So I worked with a librarian and wanted to look for a patient safety tool out there that could measure patient safety awareness among nursing students. And what I came up with, it's a nice segue after Dr. Madagoski is part of this. I found a journal, the librarian found a journal article, and it was Dr. Madagoski's 2006. Again, remember 2003, 2004, Qsen coming on the scene in 2005, it all came together. Dr. Madagoski had come up with her team a medical residence survey, and it's like buying a house or finding a car. You don't know exactly if you're going to like it until you find it, and so by gosh, the librarian found it, and I said, that's it. So I reached out to Dr. Hedrick and Dr. Madagoski and looked at that instrument, and it was exactly what I was looking for. I wasn't really looking for a cultural survey. I was looking to find out what were the attitudes of nursing students. So I adapted Dr. Madagoski's tool, and we came up with the name of HIPSACS, my dissertation team, planning ahead that this thing might really take off. So rather than narrow it and calling a nursing patient safety assessment, we called it healthcare professionals. So that's how the name of it was born. And so it was developed in 2006 as an exploratory study to look at patient safety education for nursing students, to look at their awareness, skills, and attitudes about patient safety. And so what I wanted to do was to look at the knowledge, and then we could come up with recommendations as far as what we would do with their curriculum to enhance that. It's a 34-item instrument, and there's Dr. Madagoski's name of her instrument is Patient Safety Medical Fallibility Assessment Pre- and Post-Curriculum for use with medical students. And I wanted to mention, we didn't know on this journey at the time, but actually we were already starting to start a Qsen competency of teamwork and collaboration and interprofessional collaboration. So, phase one of my study was an exploratory factor just to test the reliability of what we had tweaked it for the pre-licensure nursing students. And if you're a doctoral student, your goal is to graduate and not run around campus and be ABD, all but dissertation. So many of them continue with that. So I will say this as a note, always pick a good doctoral chair. I picked one that knew his statistics, and he knew statistics in publication. He did not have patient safety background. But he encouraged me because of a new tool to do a pilot test. That knocked me back graduating about 6 months. I can't thank him enough now on the back end, because that's like a big deal when you're looking at journal articles, is did they do a pilot test and things like that. So that was addressed at that end. So thank you, Dr. Daniel, for that. Phase two was an exploratory factor analysis with alpha reliability, validity, reliability to test the research questions. I actually had 6 total research questions in my doctoral dissertation, but I picked out the 2 that are dealing with this instrument. I had a dean of a college of health and a director of a school of nursing look at that on the front end for face validity, and it met that. So we were looking at the responses. Were they going to use our technique, exploratory factor analysis, with a new instrument? It's called Exploratory. As I'll go on, as the instrument is evolved, we're now at the confirmatory area. But the results for phases 1 and 2 did provide evidence in support of the research question. And 4 themes came up of comfort, error reporting, denial, and culture. And then another research question was, did the HIPSACs yield scores that are internally consistent with alpha reliability coefficients? And it did obtain yielded evidence in support of the question. Another lesson learned, at that point in time, I was not educated enough to hire a statistician. So I encourage you all, if you do have grant money or something, I was the data entry person, my doctoral chair was the stats expert. Now I know people always just build into it, get a stats person, so it's something, it'll save you a lot of time. So again, one of the limitations was this was an instrument adapted for use with medical residents, so we pilot tested it for the purpose of reliability and validity. Between phase 1 and phase 2, the dissertation team did decide to delete a few items that they didn't feel were relevant to the study, so we went on from there. Another limitation is it's a self-report instrument subject to weaknesses where they might just respond what they think might be the favorable answer for social desirability. The HIPSACs was administered at only a few universities. However, I did get 7 universities and college just by what they call snowball sampling. I just threw it out there, and the schools would say, hey, we want to get in on this. So actually, although I'm just talking about the tool today for this, you know, in your doctorate, about in the 2nd or 3rd year, you start asking each other, are you quan or qual? And hearing that lingo, I thought, well, I'm quan. But actually, it turned out to be what's called a mixed methods design. The instrument was the quantitative end, and then all 7 schools were really gracious with, you know, having somebody give the survey at the schools, and then also they gave me their whole curriculum. So I did what's called a content analysis, the qualitative end, and I looked through at the time of just the main topics for Qsen. They hadn't done a drill down yet of all of the components of it. The important part of this is it's really the first known study conducted of nursing students' perceptions about their awareness, skills, and attitudes regarding patient safety. I could not find any other tool. And it did have a large sample size with 318. It was a diverse group from associate, accelerated, and traditional nursing degree programs. We gave this to the students in their senior last semester before they graduated. And what happened was I would give the surveys out to a designated liaison at the school. I had a prepackaged mailer. The liaison stepped out of the room, so there would be no issues with if they didn't fill it out or anything. They wouldn't know who put it in the mailer or not, and it got back mailed to me, and I hand tabulated it all. So findings from this study support the evidence from Smith, Cronin, Wett, and Sherwood that there are opportunities for improvement. That's a quality term, an OFI, opportunities for improvement for patient safety curriculum in schools of nursing. Now again, when you're doing your research and your dissertation, you're not always going to get the same findings that you had anticipated. So on my dissertation team, I had a dean of a college of health, a patient safety expert, and 3 professors and deans of education. The big push for nursing education, you would anticipate that the BSN groups would have had a better result with patient safety. However, interesting, the associate degree students actually reported a better comfort level with reporting and a comfort level overall. So, do a little drill down on that. The feeling is that the associate degree nursing students probably start their clinical sooner than the BSN. So they probably, you know, by going out and feeling comfortable on the units, they feel more comfortable with it. So where I want to ramp up today, because I have presented on this instrument before, Qsen is an international forum now. What Dr. Madagasky and I were really surprisingly overwhelmed about the inquiries that we got on the instruments. And as we get the inquiries, we, tag team email. If she gets some, my instrument was validated, so we collaborate on an exchange. But what is really exciting is we're getting inquiries interprofessional and globally. I mean, to the point to where we've started a Chanot-Madagasky instrument tracking forum, and it's kind of gotten like a derailed train that we need to regroup. But we like to capture who we're getting inquiries from, which field that they're in, and we always ask to hear back from their findings just to kind of see if they're published and, what kind of their outcomes were. But here's just a little medley of the inquiries that we've got. US DNP students, I get inquiries from all across. They have to do their, DNP quality project or whatever, so this is good. Australia, pharmacy. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, medical education. South Korea, nursing. United Kingdom, nursing. So they're coming from all over with this. Now, you all are the first to know about an unveiling of a HIPSAX-2. My research partner is in attendance here today, Dr. Roberta Christopher. We both work at Jacksonville University, and a few years ago we started a replication of my doctoral dissertation, but taking it to the next level and doing the exact same format for practicing nurses. So we ramped up from the original HIPSAX to a 45-item instrument. We had 2 focus groups from an academic medical center that we will have access to 3,000 nurses. And I really have to give the focus groups accolades. They looked at the original tool, and we made it readable for practicing nurses. So that's where we're at with that, and the hospital system will be able to provide me with the curriculum of their mandates and everything to look at that. So that's not even published yet. And so the statistician has informed us it would be now confirmatory factor analysis because it's just small tweaking of the original HIPSAX. I do want to mention, so that you have a takeaway from this, in my reference guide, which you have access to, are all the instruments that I know, so that you don't have to go searching around for, like I did. Dr. Gail Armstrong, who's here today, used Dr. Madagasky's tool along with the HIPSAX, and she's just published A Nurse's Attitudes and Skills Around Updated Safety Concepts. One of our inquiries from the United Kingdom has published in 2014. He developed an adapted HIPSAX for the United Kingdom. So that's another item I wanted to mention is, as we go global, different countries have different cultures, different curriculum. So it was interesting in his article that he kind of revised or tweaked it because the United Kingdom has a different health system, different training. So a couple folks that I want to acknowledge. I want to acknowledge my research partner, Dr. Roberta Christopher. We are now co-directors of the Qsen Institute Regional Center at Jacksonville University for her collaboration with me on the HIPSAX-2. And I want to especially acknowledge Dr. Wendy Madagasky. You've just met her, University of Colorado, because it was several years ago that I reached out. And so I want to encourage you all, as novice researchers beginning your career, don't be shy with reaching out to somebody who you see at a conference, you see a publication. I mean, this is what the synergy is of having a better outcome than if you would just go it alone. So I want to just encourage you to do that, because look where it's come from. It's now gone global. And there's all your list already for you on your reference sheet for all potential tools that you might be interested in. Any questions? Okay, well, I thank you. Thank you. One thing I just wanted to mention, in case you are interested in seeing the tools, here's a short way of getting everything along with the statistics. All you have to do is Google my name, doctoral dissertation, University of North Florida, and it will pop up electronically.
We are a little early. If you guys have questions, it's Dr. Chapter and Dr. Hall. So if you have questions for any of our speakers, and please engage them now. And Dr. Nagowski has some handouts and materials that we can room. And Dr. Spector has the transition to practice handouts up here as well, that you're welcome to take. So any questions? Let's give our speakers a big